Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And today I want to talk to you about the upcoming Astrology Hub's 7th annual free forecast that will be taking place on December 10th. Now, this forecast features a special panel of 6 astrologers who will be covering all the key transits of the year 2023. Now, an extra bonus for those who sign up is that a breakdown of the year by zodiac sign will be delivered to your inbox right after the event. This is a wonderful experience, and I speak from experience because I have had the honor and privilege of speaking on this panel twice. So what you need to know is that it's free to register. The link is astrologyhub.com/2023. Again, to register for free, go to astrologyhub.com/2023. We'll be so happy to see you there, and you'll have a wonderful, wonderful experience. Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this week, I wanted to talk to you about the full moon in Gemini conjoining Mars retrograde in Gemini, followed by the Sun opposite Mars retrograde in Gemini. Those will be taking place on December 7th and December 8th, respectively. Now, whenever you've got something like a full moon that's going on that happens to conjoin a planet, you can pretty much assume that the effects of that planet near the moon are going to have a very powerful emotional impact. A full moon next to Venus might be really quite lovely, or a full moon next to Jupiter, tremendously benevolent. But a full moon taking place next to Mars is going to bring out Mars's more aggressive side. In fact, whenever you see something like a full moon next to Mars, you can pretty much assume that there's going to have been some sort of wrongdoing involved. And so this is going to be the case on December 7th when we have a full moon Mars conjunction. And then again, as I just said, on December 8th, when that Mars retrograde also opposes the Sun in Sagittarius in the sky. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about some sort of wrong having been done. Now, is it being done on that day? Or are we all to sort of maybe stay inside to avoid any sort of like malevolent to-dos? No, because the fact that the Mars is retrograde kind of indicates that the harm has already been done. Now, I'm not saying that there's going to be no harm done on that day. There may very well be, and we can address that in a quick moment. But what I was intrigued by with the retrograde Mars passing behind the beams of the full moon on December 7th was this idea that perhaps the harm had already been done, all right? And so there's that sort of like, where do we go from here sort of thing taking place. Now, a number of weeks ago, I spoke with you about the difficulty that people seem to have with the simple act of apologizing. And I sort of spoke about different types of apologies. There's the one that I call the drive-by apology, where you're kind of apologizing, but really not. It's something that you're kind of doing on the way to another point. And what I call the drive-by apologies in my own life are the apologies that begin with, "Sorry if you feel that way." All right. Have you ever heard that? Sorry if you feel that way. You know that that person isn't apologizing at all. It's actually rather patronizing and condescending. And they're trying to sort of acknowledge a social nicety of an apology, but there's no real investment in it. And those are what I call drive-by apologies or fake-o apologies. They're not meant and really shouldn't be respected in that regard. The other type of apology that can take place is the groveling apology, where someone begins, saying, I'm really sorry about this or whatever. And then it just brings up all of these things. And they, within moments, they're like groveling, they're crying, they're full of shame, they're full of humiliation, they're full of regret, they're full of guilt, all these sorts of things. And they can be very sort of dramatic. And if you've ever been on the other side of one of those, you've probably been left feeling cold. And with good reason, because you realize that the apology has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. And what they're trying to do is that through their tremendous show of regret and apology, they're trying to sort of like manipulate you into accepting their apology without having really apologized or acknowledged what it is that they're really apologizing for in a straightforward manner. And it doesn't need to be dramatic or over the top. Then there's another sort of apology, which is the I'm sorry, okay? Which is what I call the confrontational apology. It's like, I'm sorry, okay? Like, what else do you want from me? The angry apology, and again, that leaves one feeling like this isn't really much of an apology, and I don't really know what to do with this. And you just sort of like maybe say, okay, or go on to the next thing or whatever, because that person is just so aggressive and so angry with the apology. And then of course there's the favorite one among family members, which is you go first. It's a kind of like, you go first, you be the first to apologize, and then maybe I'll apologize, and so it's this sort of like standoff apology, where it's like you go first and maybe you feel like you have to, just to sort of like get the ball rolling. Okay, and I'm sure that all of you can even think of even more varieties or variations on the apology that is not an apology theme. But apologies are kind of like, well, this is going to sound a little odd, but apologies are kind of like love. Whether you're apologizing or receiving an apology, it's actually rare when the two people involved in this exchange are on the same level of intensity. Okay. For instance, someone might be very apologetic, very, very sincere in their apology, and the person receiving the apology might be like, oh, well, that's okay. Or, like because they're embarrassed, or that's okay because it was never a big deal. Or there can be someone who's like fuming and really, really hurt and really wants the apology. And then the person on the other side is like, I'm sorry, okay? Sorry, sorry. So what do you do with that? So there's always a kind of like adjusting that kind of takes place with the exchange of an apology with someone who's apologizing and someone who is accepting the apology. And with this retrograde Mars in Gemini opposite the Sun, what I kind of want to talk to you a bit today is about the thing that's almost as hard as apologizing, and that is accepting an apology. Like if you think back to the last time you received an apology, how comfortable were you with it? How satisfactory was it? Did you feel like it was really meant? Did you feel like it was sincere? Did you feel like it was something that you sort of like had to accept in order to go on? Like when someone says, are we good? And you're kind of like, yeah, we're good. You sort of go on with something like that. So I want to talk about accepting an apology. Accepting an apology. Now I'm not talking about something, accepting an apology about something heinous that's happened in your life. I mean, the headlines are full of crimes and horrible things that have been said and injustices that have been done that really go beyond the kind of exchange of apology that I'm talking about with you today. Today, I'm really talking to you more about a sort of like Mars in Gemini, Sun in Sagittarius type of apology. It's more kind of an exchange or an interchange that takes place. It's not a wildly horrible thing that's taken place in your life. That's its own separate category. But in accepting an apology, how are you when you accept an apology? Like if someone comes to you and says, I'm sorry, are you like, you better be? what you did was really crummy. You better be sorry. Like, are you like that? Are you taking advantage of them showing some sort of humility to sort of like rub it in or pound it in or make the point? Okay. What if someone comes to you and says, I'm really sorry for having done that? Is your response to be like, oh, it's okay. It's no big deal. It's fine. In which case you haven't really absorbed or accepted the apology either. Now, receiving an apology, and I mean it, can be almost as difficult as issuing an apology. It can be very awkward. It can make you nervous, but it's an important thing in social exchange. Just like a thank you is an important thing in a social exchange. I mean, to be able to say you're welcome following that. It's these Gemini exchanges, really, and there's a Venusian flavor, of course, with them as well, that really allow people to acknowledge and to recognize what the other person has done, and it leaves you with a pleasant feeling. But not everyone's really adept at this, and not everyone is really skilled at this, and a lot of that can actually really come from the horoscope itself. But when someone says, I'm sorry, and you're like, oh, it's no big deal, stop in a moment like that. Just stop yourself and take in what's being said. And if you feel like saying, we're good, because it's coming out of your place, or if you feel like saying, we're okay, then say it. Because that's an important acknowledgement that the apology issued by the other side has been heard. And then it allows you to either go about your day, your separate lives. Maybe it was a very quick sort of exchange of an apology, or maybe it allows you to proceed with a project or a conversation or your couple's counseling or something along those lines. But how you accept an apology is so very important, because what this dates back to, is really war. I mean, you might be like, war, but war. When I've been reading the Iliad lately, and so there are these extraordinary moments in which someone shows a plea for mercy, and I think it's like the soldier who's been beaten or whatever crouches in front of the victorious soldier, and they go and they grip the victorious soldier's chin, and it's done in such a way, to bring the attention down to them so that they also pay attention to the pleading hand. Someone pleads for mercy. Someone says, please show me mercy, and of course, if you've ever read the Iliad, these never bode well, and this kind of like stockpiles in the Greek army's bad karma, which they suffer for generations later, because they don't show mercy. They're ruled by their rage, and they don't recognize the plea for mercy. They don't recognize the apology. I'm talking specifically about Achilles here, and so he can kill mercilessly. Now, again, that might be a little bit more intense than what we're talking about, but it's coming from the same place, because when you apologize, there's a change in status. An apology can come from a place of regret and or it could come from a place of shame, or it can come from a place of guilt, or it can come from a place of really recognizing that you've done someone harm, or offense. And it might be a light offense. Maybe you stepped in front of them in line and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. And the other person goes forward, or it can be something that's deeper, and if it is, it's still signaling, the person who's apologizing, that they're engaging in an apology, and an apology is about a change in status. Okay. So the person is going to lower the defenses. The person might be a boss. The person might be a parent. The person might be over you in some way, and they're going to lower their status. But even if the person is under you, it's a child or an employee or something like that, there's still a lowering of status, and they're showing that. And so what's kind of being asked for here is a respect for that. I'm issuing an apology, and I'm lowering my status. I'm showing, contrite humility and remorse for what has been done. And so the question then becomes, how does the person accepting this respond? If you respond by rubbing it in, or now I'm going to teach this person a lesson, or now I'm going to take all of my outrage and unload it on you. Okay. It's if you're receiving an apology, it's really important for the person receiving it to judge, how hurt are the feelings? How great has the offense been? Now, the feelings can be very hurt, and the offense can be very great. And you are allowed to say, I hear your apology, but I can't accept it right now. I'm just not in that place. Let's maybe meet again when I am, but right now I'm not there. That's terrific. That's tremendous, because you're honoring your own emotional place of where you are. Like I'm recognizing your apology. I'm recognizing what you're doing, and I'm convinced that you mean it, but I'm not in the place. I'm not in the place where I can recognize this. And so then you bring the grace. You bring you say, I'm not in a place where I can recognize this. I'm too upset right now, and I'm sorry. I mean, I've heard myself even say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I can't be in that place, that you need me to be to accept this. I'm not there because I'm too upset, or I'm too angry, and I'm just not in that place. But let's say, because this is a Mars retrograde, so chances are what I might be describing to you this week is someone circling back to apologize, and someone circling back to make an attempt or an effort to make good, or to be good. Are we good? And so when that happens, think about what you can give to that. For some of you, it may not be like a big deal, but it may be like, oh, I'm fine with it. But then show I'm fine with it. It's because someone is, and show I'm fine with it if you're fine with it. If you're not so fine with it, maybe you have conditions. Maybe you have a couple of more things you need to say. Say them. Say them, but say them in the spirit of this exchange. Say them in the spirit of this exchange, because the spirit of this exchange is based on helping that person to do better. Okay, it's if they offended you in some way, or hurt you in some ways, if your instinct is to go through the grievances, it's too early for you to accept the apology. Okay, if your feeling is, now I'm going to unload my grief, it's too early for the apology. Say, I can't hear this right now. But if you can say to the person, I sort of understand where you were coming from with this. This is how you hurt me. But then this is what I'm thinking about this. What do you think? You're opening up a conversation. Okay. And that person will be able to meet you with it, because an apology is in the tradition of a truce. It's in the tradition of making peace, or finding some kind of peace or truce, or even ceasefire. But what it gets to, and what may be very much on the docket, is that Mars energy. And so to me, that's very much about helping the person to save face. Okay. It's not about letting the person get away with it. It's not about that. It's helping the person to save face. If someone is lowering their status, okay, they're lowering their status, and saving face is about respect and humiliation. Someone apologizing to you is a sign of respect. Okay, they're respecting the offense they're respecting how they had harmed you. They're respecting how they had hurt you. So it's coming from a place of respect. And it's also this display of vulnerability. And so you if you aren't ready to accept the apology, say so. But if you are ready to accept the apology, this is not a place to make someone feel humiliated or disrespected. Okay, you accept the apology in the spirit in which it is given. You accept it with grace and you respect it with dignity, because the whole point is not just the recognition of an offense having been done, but how to rehabilitate that, how to turn that around into something better, which of course, anytime that we're talking about rehabilitation or reforming or turning something around into something better, we're speaking in the spirit of Jupiter, which is the ruler of the Sagittarius sun. So these are the things that I want you to think about this week and in the days ahead.
Thanks for tuning in to the Astrology Hub Podcast Network. If you love the show, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, review, and share it. And if you don't know how to do that, here's how you can leave a review in Apple Podcasts on iPhone. Make sure you're on the landing page for the Astrology Hub podcast and not an individual episode. Scroll down to the bottom until you reach Ratings and Reviews. Click one of the 5 stars under Tap to Rate to leave a rating, and under the most recent review, tap the Write a Review button. And if you're on another device, just find out how to leave a review on whatever podcast player you use. Then, share what you love about the show or how it helps you navigate your life. We'd love to hear your stories, and by doing this, you make it possible to make shows like Horoscope Highlights happen every week. Thank you again for tuning in, for being a part of our community, and for making astrology a part of your life.